Okay, so in a previous lesson we learned about the law of sines. Remember, we use the law of sines when we're given the conditions that include angle side angle and angle angle side. However, there are situations where the law of sines is not possible, and that's if we have the side angle side or side 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 of a triangle. If that's the case, that's where we're going to have to know how to use the law of cosines, which is given to us here. So you want to make sure that in your notes you get this formula for the law of cosines written down along with the triangle so you can see the relationship here between what we know and what we're trying to find. Now, the important thing to recognize is the fact that this side here and this angle that we're taking the cosine of are always going to be across from each other. That's important. And then the other two sides, the A and the B, are the two sides that make up the angle of cosine of C. So let's look at a scenario where we would use that. So look at this one. It says two straight roads meet in Canton at a 27-degree angle. Anton is 7 miles down one road and Banton is 8 miles down the other. How far apart are Anton and Banton? Excuse me. So we're going to have to solve this triangle for x. We're trying to figure out the distance between Anton and Banton, A and B there. So if I notice that side x is across from the 27-degree angle, so this is going to be set up nicely for us, where we're going to set it up like this. It's going to be x squared equals the two sides squared and added together, minus 2 times those two sides, times the cosine of the angle, which is 27 degrees. So when you type that in on your calculator, what you want to do is you want to type all of this in all at once. So don't stop and simplify it halfway. Go ahead and just type in 7 squared plus 8 squared minus 2 and blah, blah, blah all the way to the end. So when you do that on your calculator, you should get 13.2 as your answer. Well, that's not your final answer. We still have x squared equals 13.2. So at this point, we would take the square root of both sides, and you get your answer then is x is about 3.6. So your answer would be 3.6 miles. So how far apart they are. Okay, why don't you guys see if you can't set this one up and solve it. It's very similar to the one that we just did. So here we have two straight roads meet in Canton on an angle of 38 degrees. Anton is 11 miles down one road and Banton is 5 miles down the other. How far apart are Anton and Banton? So the same exact problem, just different numbers. So why don't you guys take a second, try this one on your own. So hit pause and hit play when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, so let's see what you should have done here. We're trying to find the distance between A and B, so that's your x. That's across from this angle, so it's okay for us to set it up like this. It'll be x squared equals the 5 squared plus 11 squared minus 2 times 5 times 11 times the cosine of the angle, which is 38 degrees. Type that in on your calculator and you should have gotten as your answer 559.3. But then we have to take the square root of both sides. So you get your final answer then of 7.7. So your answer would be 7.7 miles. Okay, let's try this one. So this one, it says in triangle ABC, side C is 6 centimeters, so that's across from angle C. Side A is 8 centimeters, that's across from angle A. And angle A is 30 degrees. I need to figure out what angle B is. That's my goal. Well, I can't use the law of cosines here. Because remember, for the law of cosines, in order to use that, I have to either know an angle or a side that are across from each other. So if I'm looking for angle B, I'd have to know the side across from it. But I don't know that. And I don't want to use law of cosines to figure out this side because that's going to be kind of a pain because I don't know this side here. It's one side we don't know. So there's a couple ways that you could solve this. But one of the best ways to solve this problem is actually to use the law of sines. Because if you remember from law of sines, if I know an angle and the side across from it, we can use that to find either a missing angle or a missing side if we know the other half. So we're going to find angle C because I know the side across from it, side C, is 6. So I'm going to set this up saying the sine of 30 degrees over 8 equals the sine of angle C over the side across from it, which is 6. So we can cross multiply. So again, we're going to take and multiply these two pieces together. So it's going to be 6 times the sine of 30. Divide by what's left over, which is 8. We're actually going to take the inverse sine of that. So when you work this out, we get sine of C is 0.375. Take the inverse sine of that, and we get that angle C is about 22 degrees. But that's not our answer. That's just that angle C is 22 degrees. Now I can use the fact that there's 180 degrees in a triangle to figure out the measure of angle B. So 180 minus 30 minus 22 would give me 128. But again, we're looking for the side of B, the angle across, or the side across from angle B. So now at this point, I would have two options. I could use law of sines or law of cosines. Because I could use law of sines to say sine of 30 over 8 equals sine of 128 over x and solve that. But let's just see how we'd use this law of cosines here. So it would be x squared equals 6 squared plus 8 squared minus 2 times 6 times 8 times the cosine of the angle, which is 128 degrees. So do that on your calculator. And when you do that on your calculator, you're going to get 159, oops. So 159.1 would be your answer. But then we take the square root of that. So don't forget about the square root. That's an easy mistake to make. We take the square root of that, and when you do that, you get your answer, which is 12.6. So that would be your final answer. So some of these are going to take multiple steps. Let's actually skip to a story problem, because these are going to be a little trickier. It says a city wants to build a grass-covered playground on a small triangle-shaped lot with boundaries of length 12, 14, and 20. So let's first create a triangle. Call it A, B, and C. The smallest length is 12. We'll say this is 14. We'll say this is your longest length, which is 20. No, it's not accurate, but they should have had a diagram here for you, because when they say through what angle measure should an automatic sprinkler be set to water grass if it is placed at the corner of C, they should have had a diagram or been more specific so you knew which vertices were which. But this is how we'd set it up. This is how it was supposed to be set up. We're looking for the measure of angle C. So here's a situation where we're given the side. So we're not given any other angles. So this side is across from that angle. That's important because remember our equation, these two sides are going to be across from each other in the triangle, and then they're across from each other in our equation. So it's going to be 20 squared equals the two sides squared and added together, minus 2 times the cosine, minus 2 times the 12 times the 14 times the cosine of the angle that we're trying to find. Now we could go through this in baby steps. What I mean by that is take 20 squared, well that's going to be 400. Take 12 squared, well that's 144. 14 squared is 196, and do all this simplifying. But essentially what I'm going to have to do is subtract that sum from both sides. I do not want to make the mistake of combining these together. That is wrong. Okay, that is not the right way to approach this, because I don't know this value, I don't know that angle. So this is all one term. And that is not a like term with the other two. So that's why I have to leave that alone. So here's an easier way to do this. I'm going to subtract 12 squared from both sides and 14 squared from both sides, because my calculator can handle this all at once. So 20 squared minus 12 squared minus 14 squared is going to simplify to just be 60. And on the right side, I'm going to simplify then what I boxed up there, the negative 2, the 12, and the 14. That simplifies to be negative 336. Now, the next step is to get the cosine by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by negative 336. So when I divide by negative 336, I'm going to get negative 0.179 as my answer. So I'm going to say it's the cosine of the angle equals negative 0.179. So to find out what the measure of the angle is, I take the inverse cosine of that negative 0.179, and I get that my angle measure would be about 100 degrees, or 100.3 degrees. So that would be your measure for angle C. Let's look at another one. This time again, they should have given you a triangle here, labeled A, B, and C, where this is 15, this is 18, and this is 23. And we're trying to find the measure of angle C. So why don't you guys see if you can't try this one on your own, applying what we just talked about in the previous example, to try to find the measure of angle C there. So pause the video and hit play when you're ready to check to see if you got the correct answer. Okay, so let's see what you did here. Again, this side is across from that angle, so these are going to be the ones across from each other in the equation. So it's going to be 23 squared equals 15 squared plus 18 squared minus 2 times those, 15 times 18, times the cosine of the angle, which we're trying to find. Again, start by subtracting 15 and 18 squared from both sides. Doing so results in a negative answer this time. This ends up being negative 20. And then simplify this portion here. Well, negative 2 times 15 times times 18 is going to be negative 540 times the cosine of our angle. Divide both sides by negative 540. And when you do that, negative 20 divided by negative 540 is going to be positive, but you end up getting 0.037 as your answer. Take the inverse cosine of that to find your angle, and what you should have gotten is about 88 degrees. Or 87.9 degrees if you rounded it to the nearest tenth. Okay, so that's the law of cosines. So again, once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. Some require more work than others, but this is the formula you want to make sure you know. And again, always make sure that the side and the angle, that those two are across from each other in your equation here. And they should be across from each other in the triangle. So with that, good luck on your assignment.